people have been asking me to do an anatomy demo night or anatomy demo video or something for like more than years at this point, but like over and over again. So I was like, I have to do it at this point. But the thing is, there's just simply no way to teach you how to draw anatomy perfectly in one night. That's just not something that happens. So I was really struggling to figure out where to start. I was thinking the other day, and I remember like I was drawing in a cafe and someone was like, oh, that's so good. Like I could never do that. I can't even draw a stick figure. And I was like, that's it. That's how I'm going to teach people. I'm going to do that. I'm going to teach you how to draw from what everyone says they can only draw, because really the way that you start basic anatomy is learning how to draw what is essentially a stick figure with volume. So for tonight's lesson, I want to show you that if you can draw a stick figure and a cube, you're already able to draw the first step of drawing a human body. What I mean by saying if you can draw a stick figure and a cube, you can already draw the beginnings of the human body. What I mean by that is you can draw something that artists like to call a gesture sketch. Gesture sketches are pretty frequently used by artists to brainstorm the pose they'd like to draw in a finished piece. The purpose of a gesture sketch is to catch the energy and movements in the main masses of the body. And I will say artists don't make gesture sketches every single time they draw art pieces. We're gonna do gesture sketches of these 4 poses. And before I even show you the stick figure method, I'm gonna just show you how I would gesture now. And then we're gonna go into the stick figure method. As you can see, this pose is kind of like reaching back. The other thing with gestures that we don't often do is you're not gonna draw a lot of the like details. Pretty much did everything I wanted to, and it only took me a minute. So the thing with gestures is because they're supposed to capture the energy and your first impression of the pose, and they're practice first and foremost. Like they're not meant to be perfect. They're not like a sketch per se as much as they are an idea. The having no eraser kind of forces you into drawing very confident lines. And the more frequently you do this and the more frequently you force yourself to be confident, you actually become that way. So the reason that we did these gesture sketches is because I wanted to show you examples of gestures. It's not uncommon for people to see artists like myself sometimes freehand poses, but what you're seeing is the end result of years of practice and expecting yourself to be at that step already. In reality, it's pretty common for even very practiced artists to do multiple gesture sketches or thumbnail sketches of a piece before moving on to their sketch and final renders. So what you would do with these is like, let's say you wanted to make a piece with a character in one of these poses. You might do a few thumbnails and then continue to push the pose over and over again, like we did in our dramatic poses video or dynamic poses video. And then after doing a few gestures of the same pose, do kind of like either blow it up, or if you're a traditional artist, do a larger version of that gesture sketch as a actual proper structured sketch. Where this comes in tonight is that if you can draw a stick figure, you can draw a type of gesture sketch, which is something that focuses on the main masses of the body. And you may be asking then, okay, so what does that mean? What are the main masses of the body? I'm gonna draw this as a stick figure because again, you know, you can only draw a stick figure, right? Well, let's show you how to draw with a stick figure. So really the only thing you need to know how to draw with this is right now is lines and circles, and they don't even need to be good circles. Like you could literally just put them in as circles. I'm pretty sure this arm goes down here and this foot is kind of coming out here. I'm even gonna draw the feet, because why not? Pretty sure the hand is like here. The reason I draw out the stick figure, right? If you're really not feeling confident, if you're not feeling yourself in terms of your art and you think this is all you can draw, I think it's important to show you that like the difference between this and something that's actually like workable is simply knowing how to draw a cube. And a cube is just lines at the end of the day. The 3 main masses of the body are the kind of like bulkiest, heaviest parts of the human body. And that includes the head, which we're representing with a circle, the rib cage, which we will be representing with a cube very shortly, and the pelvis, which I will also be representing with a cube, but think more of like a shoebox cube. This is already looking so much more readable as a human body, and we literally didn't do anything different from the stick figure other than just add 2 shapes. That's it. If you could draw a circle and a cube and a line, you can draw a somewhat workable human body. But the reason that this is the case is because this is what in the art world we would call like pose blocking. Essentially what you're doing is you are making a structural diagram of all of these like masses within the body, all of the things that you would focus on. By drawing these bodily building blocks, you'll be able to capture the primary movement that the body is taking, which will help you understand how to place fat and skin later on in the artistic process. For tonight though, I'll be focusing on how to break these masses down and the important things to focus on when drawing them. Would you just use the same boxes as a base even for different bodies? Oh my god, F13A, I am so glad you asked that question. The idea that skeletons look different for fat people is a lie. Now, that said, your proportions might be different. So example, for a child's body, you might have a body that looks kind of more like this, where the head is a little larger in proportion because that person is just not done growing. Or maybe not even a child, maybe someone that's just smaller has dwarfism. Like, your bones proportions will change based off of an individual's body. But please, literally on megaphone, a fat person does not always have a bigger skeleton. Sometimes they just have a skeleton like everybody else. It doesn't matter what style you're drawing in here. You can do this with cartoon characters. You can do this with chibi characters. You can do this with realistic characters. You can do this with manga characters. The proportions will change slightly depending on what you're doing. So if I were drawing a cartoon character with one of those big ass heads, you might do this, but you could still use the box method underneath. You would just adjust it to whatever your style is doing. Once you've been doing this for a while, this method works regardless of the style that you're doing. We're going to get into doing some of these now, because the examples that I chose are going to highlight things that I think are important for you to pay attention to when you do this. Also, one other thing I'm going to do for these is I'm going to draw the spine as part of the stick figure. And you'll see that line of action is very often like lined up with the way the spine is moving. But the other thing that this helps us do is place the ribcage in front of the spine, because, you know, if you think about human anatomy, ribs are not just like the spine does not go through the ribs. The spine's kind of like back here. Ribs come out like this. Pelvis is like this. As you can see, the ribs are coming out. They're not like the spine is not intersecting the middle. So in order to make sure that that communicates in our art, we're going to draw the spine first and then draw the ribcage box coming out in front of that. But the spine is also just a line. Like, that's the other thing I want to get across, is that don't get intimidated by saying bone names, because there are ways to simplify these things in a way that makes it more accessible for you to draw. So this first pose I picked specifically to demonstrate something that I think a lot of people miss when they draw. And it's that your main masses of your body do not have to be angled or facing the same direction. In this instance, the rib cage is actually turned a little bit more to face the viewer, whereas the pelvis is faced a bit away, and they're almost opened towards us like a clamshell. And what this does is create a pretty natural looking twist. And this is something that I find a lot of people will see art and go like, oh my god, that art's so cool, the pose is so nice. And what they're seeing is just that there is an opening in the cavity of the body. I think that's called contrapposto, if I recall correctly. The first pose, what I really want to highlight here is when you have this kind of opening of the two main masses of the body cavity. Now, there's no weight put onto one foot here because this person's jumping, but I do believe that the term still applies. For the next example, we're going to do a pose in which the contrapposto actually closes towards us. Now, if we look at the pose here, pelvis is facing this way, as you can see. It seems like the rib cage is kind of facing us more, but it is absolutely at an angle. Spine here. Okay, it's not as curved as I thought. It's just ever so slightly. This person's rib cage is not tilted up as much as I was drawing it, because I didn't even draw it like that on the study. It's more level with the viewer's eye. We're gonna draw these as little teardrops again, little clown shoes, and honestly, nah, that's good. The other one that we're gonna go for, this one, you're gonna laugh, but I'm sorry, part of figure drawing is you're gonna have to focus on butts, and you're gonna have to focus on butts a lot, because the butt is unfortunately one of the main masses of the body. And in this example, the butt is actually focusing us, whereas the rib cage, we're getting the side of it, which is part of the reason why I chose this pose, because the body can twist so that one plane, aka this one, faces us, while another plane twists away. So part of the reason that I do this twist, and I show this little twist example, is because you're gonna get the spine going like through the back of one thing and to the tailbone of another. We're not gonna draw any details of the head tonight, but what I am gonna allow you to do is to draw that little crosshair that goes through the head. And my reason for doing that will become more apparent later when we do start working on head face details. But for now, think about that as like a map of the face, and you're gonna put the details so that you can figure out, is the sphere looking upwards? Is the sphere looking downwards to the side a little bit? We're not putting in any eyes or anything, so you don't have to worry about that. But getting in this practice will help you think of that sphere of the head as a more structured object than just circle. So for now, we're gonna redraw this guy. The reason that we do cubes is because it's a little easier to understand perspective and foreshortening when it comes to something that is a simple geometric shape like a cube. And what I mean by that is, when we try to envision the human body as having like parts that come closer to us, it can be kind of hard. But when you draw a cube, you can understand that as something gets closer to us, the lines open up, and the planes are going to be a little larger on this side of the box than they are going to be on this side of the box where they're farther away from us. Getting in this practice of thinking of things in like geometric shapes can really help you understand like foreshortening when it comes to the more complex forms of the human body, which is why I'm saying you might only be able to draw a stick figure, but if you can draw a stick figure and you can draw some boxes, you're like a good portion of the way there. I am going to draw the guy's head with the little crosshair this time because it helps you understand the direction the head is turning. But I wanted to show this specific example of like a body where one of the masses is facing us and another mass is facing away. Sometimes people forget when the body twists, different interior masses can face different directions. For this one, since the tailbone was facing away, we're gonna do one last example where the rib cage is facing us, but the pelvis is facing away from us. As you can see, this person's ribcage is facing us pretty square on. You only get like the little side of the ribcage. Spine, she's probably curved like this because this leg going forward is gonna hold some weight and move the spine with it. The pelvis, we are getting like the full side of the hip. We might get like a little bit of perspective of the front of the body here, but because that leg is moved forward and the other leg is like coming down from here, this pelvis, we're getting like a full side hip check. Her ribcage is actually up, like it's opened up. I think this is from a lower view. That's probably more like either head on. That was genuinely all I had to show. Other than we could do two of the plus size models that I had, because I think it's important, like I said, to remember that the skeleton is the same in all human beings. So this is another example. We're also going to get like a little bit underneath the rib cage here because this is going to open up to us in a way. And then the legs would just go like this. As you can see, not much different.